Hi everyone, welcome to an art project with Miss Francescuti. We're going to be doing a radial symmetry printmaking. Here's an example of a finished project using all the printmaking techniques we're going to learn together in class. By the time you finish learning about how to do this printing, you'll be able to do it at home with stuff that you can easily find around your house, like styrofoam from a meat tray and some art supplies. Before we can begin, you have to learn what radial symmetry is. We'll watch a video in class together and think of some ideas of how this looks. Then we'll start by creating a painted background using paints or oil pastels or markers, whatever you have on hand or at home. Now we'll use what we know about radial symmetry to create a colorful background. Remember, when you're going to print on top of this background, you'll be printing with a dark, solid color. So you want the colors of your background to be bright and have high contrast. That way they'll show up and really pop through the print on top. Now we're ready to make the template which we'll use to carve into the foam, and that foam that's carved will then become the stamp for our template. It's really important when you're creating your template to use the measurement techniques I showed in the video. That way, when you line up all of your prints, they have some nice continuity and they show radial symmetry instead of having jiggity-jaggedy edges that don't line up. Here's an example of what a finished template might end up looking like. And here's an example of what a carved piece of foam would look like, one that you would use to actually create your real print. Now let's get to it. Start by putting your name and your teacher's name on one side of your template paper. Then fold corner to corner to create a triangle, which we will use to create our template design. Here comes the measurement part. Get your ruler handy and make sure to use centimeters to measure with. Put the corner of your ruler where the 0 is in the corner of your template, along where the folded side and one of the non-folded sides meet. Now mark every 3 centimeters with your pencil as you count up the side of the ruler. We will use these 3 centimeter marks to help create guidelines on which we'll create the design for our template. Go to the folded side and mark up that side as well. Make sure that you do one of the folded sides and one of the not folded sides. Now that you've created all the marking, draw a curved line connecting one mark on one side to one mark on the other. It kind of looks like part of a rainbow. Make sure not to only mark on the unfolded sides. If you do, when you open up your template, it just won't work. Don't do this. This won't help you. Okay, we've got it all lined up with our guidelines ready to go. Now's the fun part. Create some simple designs which will then become your template, which you'll use for the printmaking process. Keep your shapes simple. It's a lot easier to draw a picture on a piece of paper than it is to carve it into styrofoam. So please keep this in mind when you're creating your template. You don't want to make something that's impossible to carve into the styrofoam, because then all the time you spent creating your template just will be of no use to you. Keep your design simple. Use simple geometric shapes to help get you started. Before we can do the other side, we have to go over the side we just did with Sharpie. Make sure you like your design before you do the sharpening part, because we can't erase Sharpies. And make sure to use a piece of paper towel so that you don't get Sharpie on the tables. Go ahead and pop that paper towel underneath your artwork so that you don't get Sharpie on the table. Trace over all of the edges of your design with the Sharpie. Now erase all the guidelines that you don't want and pencil lines that are showing off of your template. This will give you a more professional finished result, and it'll help you when you go to trace the other side to make sure that you don't accidentally copy one of the lines you don't really want in your design. Now let's use a high-tech solution in our classroom to help us trace our Sharpie design onto the other side of our page. Take your design over to a window, flip it over, and use your pencil to trace the design through the paper as you have it held up to the window. Now you're ready to Sharpie the other side and then erase all the pencil marks after you're done that. To get a little bit more pop out of the background colors on your background page, you might want to color in some of the shapes on your template The spots that are colored in will show the background color through, but the spots that are just outlined will have an outline of your background color going through. Go ahead and do that now before we move on to the next step. Before you make your template, keep in mind the design should be simple. It's really easy to draw something on paper with a pencil, but it's super hard to carve it into the styrofoam. Keep your shapes simple. Don't have too many shapes that are very, very small or too close together. This will make it really hard for you to do. Repeat some of the designs to create a unified look. Here are a couple of really neat looking templates, but there's a few spots in here that might have shapes too close together or shapes that are a bit small, which might make it hard to carve in the styrofoam. Try simplifying your shapes by not having things too close together or not having your shapes too small. Let's talk about carving the foam. You need to use a rounded pencil, not sharp or not dull, to carve into the styrofoam. And your template goes on top of a fresh piece of styrofoam. You'll notice that when I'm doing this demonstration for you, I keep flipping back and forth between my template and the styrofoam. Don't do this. Don't move your template while you're carving the foam. The reason I'm doing this in the video is so that you can actually see what I'm doing. But if you do this in real life when you're carving your template, you might notice that your template starts to shift after a while and your design just won't line up properly anymore. You also want to use a colored pencil crayon when you're tracing your template. This makes it easier for you to see if there's a spot on your template that you forgot to trace when you went over your template to carve your foam. It's okay if your template rips while you're doing this. That might mean that your pencil's too sharp or that perhaps you poked a little bit too hard when you were carving your shape. Also, make sure you trace over your entire template before you lift the template up and carve through the styrofoam a second time. Trace the whole template first with a pencil crayon, then take the template off and go over your design in the foam to make it a little bit deeper so that we have those nice little cracks where the paint will not go, and then our background design will show through there. When you're brushing the paint onto your template, make sure that you don't put too much on or too little on. If you put too much on, like I did in the top corner of my print, you might notice that the shapes won't come out very well and you won't see the background color of your background page popping through. If you don't put enough paint on your template when you're printing it, then it'll look really faded. I forgot to mention earlier, when you're making your template, do put your name on the back of your template and draw a little arrow pointing to the center of your template. You need the arrow pointing towards the center of your template so that when you put your print down on the page, you'll know which way to face it. After you've placed your print down on the page, roll it with the brayer one way, pushing quite hard while holding the template firm with your hand, and then roll it the other way again while holding the foam with your hand. Notice how my arrow is pointing towards the center. When you pull it off, do it in one swift movement without wiggling the foam on the page. Rolling your foam with even pressure will also make sure that your prints turn out looking really sharp. Remember, when you place your template down, the arrow goes to the center and you try to line up the edges so that when you take your foam off, the print looks like it's showing radial symmetry and your design edges are lining up. Load your template up with paint again each time in between the printmaking process. If you don't do that, you'll end up with a faded looking print, which you just won't like. Always make sure to line up the edges of your print with the arrow facing towards the center of the print and roll in both directions with equal pressure with the brayer. Pull it off in one swift movement without wiggling your foam piece to make sure the lines are really crisp on your prints. If you don't put paint on your foam stamp in between printmaking process, you will get a faded print. Here's what I'm talking about. Now you know how the printmaking process works. You can try doing this at home with stuff that you already have at home. Have fun.